in 365 Science of Mind, the Divine Spirit is not a mythical, abstract being living somewhere above this earth. God is a divine presence revealing himself to everyone who believes. Where God is recognized, there is life. Where the power of God is realized, there is action. Where the goodness of God is acknowledged, there is peace. Please look at the screen and speak this affirmation with me with power. I start each day with joy, possibility, and peace, remembering that the universe is for me, forgiving myself and others no matter what, creating a life full of passion, receiving love with an open heart, and giving to my community in a meaningful way. Thank you.
So this topic this month, I want to share with you a little bit about how synchronicity works. In our Roots class this last week, I I came upon something that I had found some time ago to do as an exercise for the class, and it came out of this book called Thou Shalt Not Suffer by Mark Anthony Lord. And that stuck with me. We had the exercise that we did, we're going to actually do today in a sort of a way. But what spurred me on is it really helped me to kind of set up the whole series of topics for this month. And so what you're going to notice from this moment forward is I'm stepping out in a way that I haven't before. Before I've used kind of frameworks of messages or topics from another minister. And I felt a calling and an inner urging to just follow the lead of Spirit, see what shows up, and then and then show it and allow it to come through me. So that was my cue. I felt inspired by this topic, "Thou shalt not suffer," and I thought, how perfect for the Easter season, because we can really get caught up in this whole thing about the suffering, that Jesus went through and that kind of thing, and then we kind of take it on as a mantle of what we're supposed to do in our own lives. So this month, I have a proposal that we adopt an 11th commandment for ourselves: thou shalt not suffer. Yeah, it does sound good, doesn't it? And so, to me, the experience that I had yesterday was such a good example of that. Several of us, Reverend Linda and Lucinda and I, went to the party. It was really a party, a celebration of life of Reverend Sheila that apparently she planned herself. The actual service itself was just a few projections on the screen, some words from Reverend Michael, Ricky Byers, and a couple of other people that loved her. A beautiful prayer done by one of the practitioners, a couple words by the new senior minister, and then the whole rest of the time it was party, right? That's what Reverend Sheila wanted. She wanted everybody to have fun, to keep the part at the beginning short, really lovely, but then to party. And we were there. We left, I don't know, it was after 4 when we finally left. And then I talked to Pat, who was there, and she said, "Oh, and after you left, then the party really took off, and it was dancing and and lots of music, musicians." Anyway, it's given me a really good idea for our installation because it was just a lot of fun. So anyway, to me, that was such a great example of taking upon themselves or herself and the community, "Thou shalt not suffer." You know what? Reverend Sheila would not want everybody to suffer. She wants them to enjoy life and to enjoy the life that she's contributed, and so how beautiful. And truly, our memorial services in New Thought are traditionally called celebration of life for that reason, because it's a reminder that we are to be inspired by that person, and Yes, we have the full range of emotions. It doesn't mean that we don't feel our emotions. But the suffering is the stuckness. It's when we're stuck in that recycling the old, um, dramas of the past, and or the things that we think should be happening now or shouldn't be happening now. When we're in resistance to life, that is what causes the suffering. If we look at the teachings of Buddha, um, his life was dedicated to alleviating suffering. And he said, really, it's based on a couple of things. It's based on clinging to the way we want things to be, trying to cling on to the pleasures, and also aversion to the things that we don't like. And therefore, we just make ourselves miserable. So in this teaching, we talk about not being loving what is, okay? Accepting what is. And yes, we're always co-creating something new. We're using whatever stimulates us in the present moment to give rise to new desires. So it is about creating, and it's about having desires, but it's about not clinging to it so much that you can't enjoy your life, because we want to let go of that mantle of suffering and really, really live the lives that we're meant to live. And so thank you, Reverend Sheila, for just a great reminder of this truth. It was just so beautiful. So today, this entire month is about that, but today in particular, I want to address this idea of our concepts of God. And even those of us who've been in the teaching for a long time, because I'll speak for myself. I've been in the teaching a long time, and I find that there are still times when I can get caught up in that old paradigm. So what's the old paradigm I'm talking about? So tell me all the negative things that you maybe learned about God when you were growing up. Just call them out. Right. What else?
Wrathful God.
Fearful.
Concept of hell.
Oh, the concept of hell. If you don't obey God, you go to hell. Right. What else? Pardon? It's not a part of us, some separate being off up there somewhere, keeping a record of all of your bad deeds so that you can be punished, judging. And even in the Old Testament, it talks about a jealous God. Now, doesn't this sound like maybe the human ego has made up a lot of this stuff? So the beauty of it is we have these spiritual masters, and Jesus was one of them, Buddha was one of them, these spiritual masters who saw beyond this old paradigm, who saw beyond it, and realized that this energy, this source, this presence that we call God is something different. So here's what I want to do before I get into this any longer. I want to share with you an analogy that I think is so speaks to this. And so just imagine, if you would, a 3-year-old on his tricycle. He's bicycling along, enjoying himself. The tricycle just fits perfectly. His legs just, reach the right distance and just enjoying himself. And a few years later, okay, so let's say he's 10 now, he's trying to still ride the same tricycle. It's getting very awkward. His legs are getting a little too long, right? And then a little bit later, he's a teen. He gets on that tricycle, and it's just really difficult to get around. So then fast forward, the same person, age 30, trying to ride the tricycle. Does everybody see where I'm going with this? and so here so what he usually may do at that point is just throw the tricycle away and say, bicycles are not for me. Isn't this kind of a clear analogy of what happens with many of us? Is because we have been brought up with this old idea of an outside punishing God that we learned in our youth, we now suddenly, whenever we kind of wake up to it, say, oh my gosh, and maybe, and this is what I did in college, throw out the whole thing. It's like, this is just so ridiculous. I don't believe in any of it. And then, later on, as I got older, I began to have some mystical experiences and stuff that brought me back. But it required me to let go of this old concept and take on a larger idea, a bigger idea of this divine presence that we call God. For some people, the word God is so associated with that punishing presence, they want to throw out the word God. I can understand that. I really can. What I've done, though, personally, is just to expand that presence, the awareness of that presence, and use some different names: universal intelligence, infinite love, source of all that is. Many of you have some other ideas that you may use to describe this infinite presence. And the great mystics have told us that this presence is a center that is everywhere, a presence that's center is everywhere and its circumference is nowhere. Omnipresence, not just there or there or there and missing here or there, but present in its fullness everywhere. And some like to call God he, and some like to call God she, and some say it. And I've kind of used it because because to me, this presence, conscious, aware, and alive, encompasses all of it. He, she, it encompasses the entire thing. And because of this nature of this presence, think of this, the full potentiality of that presence is in every being. That's why we have been told we are unlimited beings. We have unlimited potential. So I don't know that we can ever get to the point where we experience all of it. That's why it's an evolutionary process of continuing to open to freer, fuller, more expanded expression of our divinity. So it's important to let go of those old paradigms in order to replace it with the new. Because here's the deal. This is how it works. The Bible says that you cannot serve two masters. You can't serve a punishing God and a loving God at the same time. Serve and serve just means be that presence, show up as that presence. That's the way I look at it. Serve the greater good as that presence, and knowing that everything else is that presence of the divine. So it means that we must let go of that punishing idea once and for all, and all of the remnants. Think about the consequences in your life of carrying that idea of a punishing God, however it might be. And this stuff lays in the subconscious. That's why even though we consciously work at developing this greater idea, it's in the media, it's in the movies, it's we've a lot of us have heard it when we were growing up. So it's in the subconscious. So that's why it's important to keep seeding our subconsciousness with this greater idea of life itself. So the great masters have talked about this. And Jesus himself, many of us have really misunderstood his message. I believe, this is my, and you get to believe what you want, my personal perspective is that he was here to model what it means to be a realized being. And he said, "These things I do, and even greater things you shall do." He was telling us that we are the light. Ye are gods, he said, children of the Most High. It's all there. He was setting an example and sharing with us how to get to that point where we can wake up to who we are and be that beneficial presence that we were meant to be on this planet. So think about that. I just want to breathe a moment. So as we let go of that old idea, plant the new idea, we're letting go of some old patterns of suffering, Because think about some of the patterns of suffering that have gone with the punishing God. Unworthiness, health issues. Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, one of the father of New Thought, found in his early discoveries, this is back in the 1800s, he had a healing ministry, and he found that there was there were two aspects of mind, conscious mind and subconscious mind. And he found this out through hypnotherapy back in those days, which he then later dispensed of and used the beginning stages of what we now call spiritual mind treatment, a version of that, the prayer that we use. And he found that 90% of the beliefs that people had in that day and age, could be true now, I don't know, were toxic to their lives and to their bodies. And he found, he treated thousands of people. He found that the toxic beliefs were based on this idea of a punishing God. And he found that when he helped these patients to replace that idea with this more expansive idea of God is love, God is infinite wisdom, God is everywhere around you and is for you, versions of this, people healed. The ailments, these serious ailments that they had, healed. And so then he began to see there's a connection here between these toxic beliefs and the effects on the body and the mind. Wow. And again, like I said, all the health issues, the unworthiness issues, I'm not enough, self-condemnation, self-deprecation, self-doubt, all of those things, a doubt that feeling like you're abandoned in the universe, all of that comes from this misconception of this one infinite universal presence of love. And then the quantum scientists come in. I just read, actually it was this morning. No, it was this morning. Because I was journaling this morning, and then I was kind of drawn to look something up. And I found a quote by Max Planck, 1918, a great scientist and physicist. And he talked about that after his studies, that there's a force in the universe that holds all these particles together in matter. And he said that force has to be intelligence, and that force he felt was a matrix of mind. He called it universal mind with a capital M that held it all together. We talk about the mind of God, a matrix, and I looked up the word matrix, and the word matrix means an environment or structure in which everything is held together. And in our teachings, we've found that they're thoughts, and we've come to understand through the sciences that the subconscious is the builder of the body. Just like Quimby found, and therefore keeping our minds filled with thoughts of love and peace and joy and goodness, and all that we've learned about in the Bible and all these other sacred teachings as well, about keeping our minds focused on the good. And then it's done unto us as we believe. We are empowered beings. We are given freedom of choice to either choose suffering or not. So I invite all of you with me to choose it, to not choose suffering, to not choose it, to choose to choose joy, to give birth to joy in this day and age. So here's a practice that I'd like you to try this month. And it's simply this. It is to write a letter to the old concept of God and fire it. Fire him, her, it. We did this in our class the other night. And what happened? Share with me. The 3 students are here. What happened when you wrote the letter firing that old punishing God? Can you remember? When we read them to each other? Exactly. We had a lot of laughter over it. I mean, we wrote our, I'm firing you, so it's a way of just really stating to our subconscious, I am letting it go. I'm firing this old idea of punishing God. And then we wrote a hiring letter for the God of love. We're hiring the God of love. And of course, it's all tongue in cheek, but it's to help our subconscious embrace this loving God, accept this loving God, this idea of a universal goodness that is for us once and for all. So I invite you to do that this week. Anybody on for that? Yeah, I mean, it's really a great practice. You have an example? You want to read? Okay, let's have Dwayne read his. Dwayne, come up on the mic. Go ahead. How perfect! Thank you, Dwayne.
I trouble reading my writing. I sort of scribbled this down, but I'll get through it. Dear God, for years and years, I have believed in you. My faith in you has been steadfast. However, I have begun to realize you are not what you have led me to believe. The main thing I don't like about you is that you are a punishing God. If I make an error or sin, you punish me. That is no way for a God to be. Secondly, I want to see you now within me. It is my understanding I'll not see you until I die. If I wait until then, I will have missed everything. Based on the above two facts, I am terminating our relationship. It is so terrible that you are filling humanity's minds with such untruths. Now, This
Okay.
is the other part. I just fired a useless, lying God. I'm in the market for a new God. I want a God that is loving and doesn't know what punishment means. I also want a God that will allow me to be with him or her at all times. I want a God that goes to bed with me and wakes up with me. Finally, Finally, I want him or her to be with me during all my daily activities. If you feel like you meet these requirements, please apply within.
And so, see, you can be as creative as you want, but the idea is to adopt and accept this idea of a totally for you God, totally for you, every minute of every day. Absolutely supportive, loving presence. Because, again, what I'm saying is the spiritual masters have taught us this is the truth. Those who really got the deep teachings. And the sciences are beginning to show this as well. It's all coming together, science and spirituality. I love how it just all interweaves because it's all out of the same source, the same truth. And so it is.
That was absolutely